Have you ever been treated like you were replaceable, like your presence in someone's life was temporary, forgettable, even disposable? In today's world, where people disconnect with the swipe of a finger and forget you faster than they remembered you, the most powerful thing you can do is rise not through bitterness, but through inner transformation. You don't need to seek revenge, prove a point, or chase anyone to recognize your worth. In Buddhist philosophy, it's not about becoming louder, it's about becoming still. It's about becoming so rooted, so radiant, and so peaceful that your presence becomes unforgettable. Because true growth doesn't shout, it radiates. This is not a guide to make someone regret losing you out of spite. It is a spiritual blueprint to help you evolve into someone so full, so self-sufficient, and so aligned with your purpose that the memory of you lingers in silence long after you're gone. Let us now explore the profound ways to become the one they'll regret, letting go not because you wanted them to, but because you became someone they could never replace. 1. Detached to elevation. Detached to elevate. One of the most life-changing decisions you will ever make is the decision to let go not out of weakness, but from a place of deep inner strength. Detachment, according to Buddhist wisdom, is not about becoming cold, emotionless, or uncaring. Rather, it is about creating enough space within yourself to see things clearly, to experience emotions without becoming enslaved by them, and to choose peace over chaos. When we become attached to people, outcomes, or relationships, we often place our happiness in their hands. We begin to believe that our sense of worth is tied to whether someone stays, responds, approves, or loves us back. But this is where suffering takes root, because nothing in this world is permanent. People change, situations evolve, and expectations are not always met. The deeper we cling, the deeper we hurt when those things are taken from us. Detachment means acknowledging that you cannot control how others treat you, but you can always control how you respond to it. When someone chooses to leave your life or starts making you feel like an option instead of a priority, your instinct might be to hold on tighter, to prove your worth, or to fight to stay in their world. But this only leads to more pain. True detachment is the moment you stop trying to squeeze your presence into someone else's shrinking space and start expanding into your own. It is the conscious choice to withdraw your energy from where it is no longer appreciated and redirect it back into yourself. It is important to understand that detachment does not mean closing your heart or pretending you never cared. It means you care enough about your well-being to stop investing in people or situations that no longer align with your growth. You begin to see your peace not as something to sacrifice for love or validation, but as something sacred to protect. And this shift in mindset is what begins your spiritual elevation. The more you detach from the need to be seen, heard, or chosen by others, the more you begin to see yourself clearly. You start to realize that your value is not defined by external recognition, but by your own awareness of who you are becoming. Detachment invites you to step into the role of the silent observer. You stop reacting to every disappointment and instead respond with wisdom. You allow people to come and go without letting their presence or absence shake your sense of identity. And as you master this art, you begin to rise not in arrogance, but in quiet power. Your energy becomes calm, your words more intentional, and your presence more magnetic. Because nothing is more unforgettable than someone who didn't cling, didn't beg, didn't fight to be remembered, someone who simply let go with dignity and chose to grow in silence. In time, the very people who took you for granted will begin to feel your absence not because you tried to make them regret it, but because your evolution speaks for itself. Detachment is not the end of love, it's the beginning of freedom. It's the path that leads you away from what you thought you needed and towards who you were always meant to become. And when you truly understand this, you stop asking for space in someone else's life because you've built a universe within yourself where you already belong. 3. Transcend your old identity. It's easy to believe that the version of you someone walked away from is all you'll ever be. Especially after rejection, people tend to carry the weight of labels placed upon them: too sensitive, too much, not enough. These words can linger like shadows over your self-worth, convincing you that you're somehow broken or unworthy of being fully seen. But one of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the truth that the self is not fixed. The person you were yesterday is already gone. Every breath, every thought, and every experience shapes you into something new. You are not a finished story, you are a river, constantly flowing, constantly changing. The pain you feel today is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of transformation beginning to unfold. The most beautiful evolution happens in silence, not in the presence of those who left. You don't need an audience to become whole. In fact, some of the greatest breakthroughs come when you're all alone, sitting quietly with your discomfort, facing the pieces of yourself that still ache, and deciding to heal anyway. Transcending your old identity means breaking free from the roles others assigned to you. Maybe they saw you as dependent, fragile, easy to walk away from. Maybe you even believed it. But growth begins the moment you realize you are not required to remain the version of yourself that made others feel comfortable. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to become someone they no longer recognize, someone wiser, calmer, more rooted, and more resilient than they ever imagined. Let their absence be your classroom. Let their silence become the soil in which your self-worth grows. Stop chasing the memory of who you were when they loved you and start creating the version of you who no longer needs their love to thrive. This is not about revenge, it's about revelation. About discovering that your greatest strength was never in being accepted by others, but in having the courage to accept yourself completely and unconditionally. When you begin to transcend your old identity, you stop living as someone reacting to the past and start becoming someone who is writing a new future, one where your voice is steady, your heart is open, and your soul no longer asks for permission to grow. And what's most powerful about this transformation is that it doesn't need to be broadcasted. You don't have to prove your glow to anyone. Your healing will show in your presence, in your decisions, in the way you carry yourself with quiet confidence. One day, those who let go of you will look back and see a person who has risen beyond the pain, someone who no longer needs their recognition to feel complete. And in that moment, they'll realize they didn't lose the old you. They missed the opportunity to grow alongside someone who was becoming truly extraordinary. But by then, you will have already outgrown the need for them to understand. Because your journey will no longer be about who left it, will be about who you became after they did. 4. Master emotional alchemy. One of the most liberating truths in Buddhist philosophy is that pain is not the enemy, is a teacher. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every abandonment is not merely a wound, it is a doorway. A doorway into a deeper version of yourself. A wiser version. A version that doesn't just survive, but transforms. Emotional alchemy is the process of turning your most painful experiences into the most profound sources of personal growth and spiritual clarity. It is the ability to take everything that once broke you and allow it to build you instead. And like true alchemy, it begins not by changing the outer world, but by changing your inner relationship to pain. Most people fear emotional pain because they don't know how to sit with it. They run from it, numb it, or project it onto others. But in Buddhism, suffering is not meant to be escaped. It is meant to be understood. When you turn inward, when you allow yourself to fully feel the ache without judgment, without resistance, something powerful begins to happen. You begin to see that pain is not the problem, your refusal to learn from it is. The person who left you, the betrayal that shattered your trust, the silence that pierced your heart, these are not punishments. They are mirrors. They reflect where you are still attached, where you still seek validation, where you still believe someone else holds the key to your peace. Emotional alchemy teaches you to face these moments with courage, not to deny the emotion, but to welcome it like a guest who has come bearing hidden wisdom. You sit with the sadness, you breathe through the anxiety, you listen to the anger, and then you ask, gently and honestly, what is this here to teach me? Maybe it's teaching you to set stronger boundaries. Maybe it's showing you where you've abandoned yourself for others. Maybe it's calling you to awaken to a deeper self-love you never realized you needed. Whatever the message, it will only arrive through presence, see note, avoidance. And here's where the transformation becomes undeniable. When you stop reacting from your wounds and start responding from your wisdom, you become a force of quiet strength. People begin to notice your calm, your clarity, your emotional depth. They won't be able to explain it, but they'll feel it. You will no longer be the person who breaks under pressure. You will be the one who breathes through it with grace. And ironically, the very ones who caused your pain may look back and realize they handed you the key to your awakening. They may have thought they were walking away from someone fragile, but what they left behind was someone rising into their highest power. This is the essence of emotional alchemy, not pretending that you're okay when you're not, but learning how to hold your pain with compassion and allow it to dissolve into peace. You stop blaming others for how you feel and start taking full ownership of your healing. And in doing so, you become unshakable. You become someone who glows, not because life has been easy, but because you've learned how to turn every tear into a lesson, every ending into a beginning, and every scar into a story of strength. That is the kind of transformation people remember. That is the kind of presence that can never be replaced. 5. Radiate through stillness. In a world where everyone is busy proving, posting, performing, and pleasing, there is something incredibly powerful, almost sacred about a person who chooses stillness. Stillness is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is not passivity. In Buddhist thought, stillness is the most powerful form of presence. It is the quiet awareness that sits beneath the noise of the world. It is the energy of someone who no longer feels the need to fight for attention or chase after those who drifted away. To radiate through stillness means to walk through the world with such deep internal peace that your presence alone becomes louder than any words you could say. When someone leaves your life, the temptation is to react, to send messages, to demand answers, to prove your worth, to remind them of what they've lost. But the more you engage in this cycle, the more you disconnect from yourself. Stillness is the art of stepping back, not because you're indifferent, but because your self-respect is greater than your desire for validation. It is in this sacred silence that your true power is born. You don't explain yourself. You don't chase closure. You don't try to reclaim your place in their story. You simply become so deeply rooted in your own presence that your absence begins to speak louder than anything you could ever say. There is a spiritual magnetism in those who learn to be calm in the middle of their chaos. Think about the people who have left you or underestimated you, those who expected you to fall apart, to react emotionally, to seek their approval even after they disrespected your value. Now imagine choosing the opposite. Imagine choosing silence. Choosing to rise inwardly, choosing to rebuild your energy, your discipline, your connection with the divine. That's when stillness becomes a statement. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to scream your progress. The clarity of your mind and the peace in your soul begin to shine through everything you do, everything you don't say, and every space you walk into. In Buddhist meditation, practitioners sit in stillness, not because they are escaping life, but because they are entering it more fully than ever before. In silence, you meet yourself. In silence, you reconnect with what matters. You begin to notice how little you actually need to feel whole. How many of the people and things you once thought were essential were only distractions from your true path. The moment you stop trying to be loud in someone else's life and start becoming quiet in your own, something changes. You begin to radiate a kind of peace that others feel before you even speak. You begin to glow not because of external affirmation, but because you've cleared out everything that once disturbed your light. And that's when the regret begins, not because you wanted them to feel it, but because they will naturally sense the contrast. They will remember the calmness you brought. They will remember the way your energy stabilized their chaos, even if they didn't appreciate it then. Stillness lingers in the mind far longer than noise. While others move on chasing distractions, your stillness becomes a mirror that reflects everything they lost. You will not need to remind them, they will remember. Because when someone who was once part of your life sees you standing in complete inner peace, unshaken, unbothered, and unchained from their absence, it reveals a kind of strength that is impossible to ignore. True stillness isn't the absence of motion, it is the fullness of presence. It's not about staying silent out of fear. It's about being so spiritually aligned that you no longer have to speak to be seen. You no longer have to be loud to be known. You radiate through your peace, through your discipline, through your aura. And the deeper your stillness, the more unforgettable you become. Because in a world that is constantly chasing noise, the soul that chooses silence becomes the one they quietly wish they never lost. 6. Build an inner world no one can steal. One of the greatest awakenings you will ever experience is the realization that your peace must never depend on someone else's presence. That your sense of worth, your feeling of joy, your clarity of mind, none of it should be built on unstable ground. Because anything that exists outside of you can be taken away, people can leave, circumstances can change, promises can be broken. But what you build inside yourself, your discipline, your spiritual grounding, your self-respect, your emotional balance, that is yours. That cannot be stolen, manipulated, or destroyed by anyone else. And Buddhist philosophy teaches us exactly this. Liberation is not found by controlling the outside world, but by mastering the inner one. Most people spend their lives decorating the outside while their internal world remains in ruins. They seek validation through relationships, possessions, or social status. And when those external things are lost or threatened, their identity collapses. But when you decide to turn inward and begin building your life from the inside out, you create something that no one can take from you. That is your sacred temple. You build it by spending time with yourself, not to escape others, but to finally meet the version of you that doesn't rely on anyone to feel whole. You strengthen it with mindfulness, with prayer, with silence, with reflection. You design it through discipline, through choosing wisdom over impulse, and through healing what you used to avoid. This inner world becomes your sanctuary. When the noise outside gets too loud, you retreat inward and find clarity. When someone rejects you or treats you like you're replaceable, it doesn't destroy you because you've built something permanent within yourself. Your self-love doesn't shatter when someone leaves. Your purpose doesn't fade when you're alone. Your joy doesn't vanish when others don't notice you, because it was never dependent on them in the first place. You've filled your own cup, and now you don't just survive without others, you thrive in your own presence. That is rare, that is powerful, that is unforgettable. There will come a time when the people who underestimated you will look back and realize that while they were distracted by surface-level appearances, you were building something sacred, something eternal within yourself. They'll realize you were never needy, you were just in a stage of growth. And once you outgrew the version of you that relied on others for security, you stepped into a strength they never saw coming. You became emotionally self-sufficient, spiritually grounded, mentally free. And that's when you become irreplaceable, not because you shouted louder or begged longer, but because your inner peace cannot be found anywhere else. And here's the deeper truth. When you build your inner world with devotion and intention, you don't just elevate your own life, you elevate everyone who comes into contact with you. Your calm becomes medicine. Your energy becomes stabilizing. Your presence becomes rare. And those who come and go will always feel the difference between you and the noise of the world. They may not say it. They may not even realize it right away. But something about you will stay with them, because people forget what you said, they forget what you did, but they never forget how your presence made them feel. So make your inner world beautiful. Fill it with compassion. Fill it with strength. Fill it with light. Clean out the old wounds, the limiting beliefs, the fears that were planted in you by people who didn't know how to love you. Open the windows of your soul and let your breath flow like wind through a quiet forest. Let your mind become a place of refuge. Let your heart become a wellspring of love that never runs dry. And once you do, nothing outside of you will ever have the power to define you again. This is the power of building from within. It is the quiet art of becoming whole. And once you master it, you will never fear loss again. Because you will know deep in your bones that everything you truly need already lives inside you. 7. Love without clinging. Walk away without fear. Love is one of the most beautiful experiences we can have as human beings, but it is also one of the most misunderstood. Many believe that love means holding tightly, constantly being present, fearing loss, or depending entirely on another person for happiness. But Buddhism offers a different view, a higher, freer, and more peaceful kind of love. It teaches us that true love is not attachment, it is compassion, it is freedom. It is offering your heart with openness, but not chaining your soul to the outcome. To love without clinging is one of the highest forms of spiritual strength. It means you can care deeply, fully, and purely for someone, yet never lose yourself in the process. When we cling, we suffer. We confuse possession with love. We try to hold on to people who are meant to walk a different path. We measure our worth by how much someone needs us or how often they stay. And when they leave, we collapse. But this is not love, it is fear disguised as connection. True love, from the Buddhist perspective, is not rooted in grasping or dependency, it is rooted in awareness. It recognizes the impermanence of all things, including relationships. It does not resist change. It embraces it with grace. When you love someone without clinging, you honor their freedom as much as your own. You don't try to control them. You don't force them to stay. You love them as they are in this moment, and if they must leave, you let them go without bitterness. Not because you didn't care, but because you cared enough to understand that love is not about ownership. It's about presence. It's about being fully there when you're together, and fully whole when you're apart. It's about not using someone as a crutch for your emptiness, but sharing your fullness with them while it lasts. And when the time comes, if it comes to walk away, you do so without fear. You don't stay in places where you are only tolerated. You don't beg to be seen. You don't lose your dignity in the name of keeping a connection alive. You understand that the most powerful departure is one made with peace in your heart. You don't slam the door or make a grand announcement. You simply step away, quietly and respectfully, because your soul knows when a chapter is complete. And in that quiet exit, there is a power that echoes louder than any words could. This kind of walk-away energy is rare, because most people leave with resentment or desperation. But when you leave with love still in your heart, when you detach without blame, you leave behind a silence that lingers. You become a memory that whispers, not a wound that screams. And the ones who lost you, the ones who didn't value your calm, your loyalty, your presence, they begin to feel it. Not right away, but eventually, because real love is not easily replaced. Especially the kind that asks for nothing, holds space with patience, and walks away not out of hate, but out of wisdom. This kind of loving without clinging doesn't just set others free, it sets you free. You no longer live in fear of being abandoned because you know you cannot abandon yourself. You no longer fear the loss of others because you have found peace in your own company. You realize that if someone chooses to walk away, it does not mean you were unworthy. It simply means they were not aligned with your journey, and rather than resist, you surrender. You bless them in your heart and continue walking your path with clarity, grace, and unshakable faith in what's ahead. Love without clinging, let go without bitterness, walk away without fear. These are not weaknesses, they are the highest expressions of inner freedom, and once you embody them, you become unforgettable. Not because you tried to be, but because your peace, your love, your light, it stays long after you've gone. 8. Be so rooted in your purpose that no loss can shake you. There will come a moment on your path when you realize that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you build with your purpose, not with your past, not with the people who left, not even with the version of yourself that's still learning to heal, but with your Dharma, your sacred mission, the reason your soul came to this world. In Buddhism, this alignment with one's higher path is not just about achievement, it's about liberation. It's about transcending the fragile web of expectations, attachments, and distractions, and stepping fully into the truth of who you are meant to become. When you root yourself so deeply in this inner calling, no external rejection, no painful ending, no loss, no matter how heavy, can pull you out of alignment. Many people lose themselves when they lose someone they love. They pause their growth. They stop living with intention. They wait for closure, for apologies, for someone to come back and recognize their worth. But when you truly understand your purpose, you stop waiting. You stop hoping for someone else to complete the story you were always meant to write on your own. You begin to realize that your path is not about being chosen, it is about choosing yourself, choosing the life you were meant to live, choosing the work that speaks through your soul, choosing the habits that reflect who you are becoming, not who you used to be. That is how you become unshakable. When you wake up each day with a sense of devotion not to people, but to your growth, you become magnetic. Your energy shifts. Your attention becomes sacred. You stop entertaining anything that doesn't align with your path. The texts you no longer respond to, the places you no longer go, the conversations you no longer have, it's not arrogance, it's focus. It's knowing that your time is your currency, your energy is your temple, and your mind is not a playground for those who never intended to stay. When you start living with purpose, your actions speak louder than your pain. Your life becomes a prayer. Your work becomes your voice. Your presence becomes a quiet force that draws in the right people and naturally filters out the wrong ones without you having to chase, convince, or explain. And those who once took you for granted, they begin to notice. Not because you begged for their attention, but because your light kept growing in their absence. They start to feel the weight of your silence. They begin to understand that they didn't just lose a person, they lost a presence, a soul with vision, a spirit that healed others by simply being. And by the time they realize it, you're already walking deeper into your calling, already becoming someone they could never reach again. Not because you closed the door, but because your evolution took you beyond the threshold they chose not to cross with you. This is the secret. When you live with purpose, you no longer need revenge. You no longer need to be remembered. You no longer need to be missed, because your mission becomes your comfort. Your growth becomes your closure. Your alignment becomes your affirmation. The applause of the world becomes irrelevant, because your fulfillment now comes from within, from doing the work, from showing up every day for yourself, from living in a way that honors your inner truth, even when no one is watching. Purpose anchors you. It grounds you in the storms of rejection and heartbreak. It reminds you that your life is not about being accepted by others, it's about fulfilling the sacred contract written between your soul and the divine. It teaches you that even in the silence, even in the solitude, Even in the moments where no one understands you, your existence still carries meaning. Every breath you take, every lesson you learn, every wound you turn into wisdom adds another layer to your becoming. And once you begin to live like this, the opinions of others lose their grip on you. The fear of being left behind disappears. Because you are no longer looking behind you, are walking forward, eyes open, heart steady, soul fully lit with direction. To be rooted in purpose is to be unmovable in your truth. It is to love without clinging, to grow without bitterness, and to walk away without losing your balance. It is to know that the ones who left did not interrupt your journey. They simply could not walk at your pace. And that is okay, because your path is not meant to be walked by everyone. It is meant to be walked with reverence, intention, and fierce loyalty to the highest version of yourself. That is what makes you unforgettable. That is what makes you irreplaceable. And that is what makes the world silently regret letting you go. 9. Become the embodiment of peace they could never find elsewhere. There is something profoundly rare and unforgettable about a soul that learns to carry peace in a world addicted to chaos. In Buddhism, the ultimate aim is not to be followed, admired, or desired. It is to be liberated. Liberated from cravings, from attachments, from the illusions of ego and control. And when you reach that state, when you become truly at home within yourself, your presence becomes a sanctuary. You become the calm in someone else's storm, the silence that softens their noise, the warmth that lingers even after you're gone. The person who has mastered inner peace becomes irreplaceable, not because they demanded to be remembered, but because forgetting them becomes impossible. Most people live with noise in their minds. They are constantly chasing attention, validation, pleasure, distraction. They search for someone to fill the emptiness they refuse to confront within themselves. But when you choose to become still, when you choose to face your shadows and cleanse them through meditation, breath, discipline, and detachment, you step into a frequency that most people have never experienced. You no longer seek peace from others. You carry it within your voice, your gaze, your silence, your actions. And when people experience this kind of energy, even one seat stays with them forever. Because in a world filled with reactive souls, the one who chooses presence over pressure stands out like a flame in a dark forest. This kind of peace is not built overnight. It is born through suffering, through heartbreak that didn't destroy you, through rejection that didn't define you, through loneliness that became your teacher. Every painful experience you have ever endured has been preparing you to become this persona, one who no longer needs to win others over because they've already won themselves. The one who no longer fears being alone because solitude is where they found their voice. The one who no longer chases answers because they've learned to sit with the question in silence and allow the truth to arise without force. And the irony is, since you become this embodiment of peace, people begin to feel your absence in ways they never noticed your presence. You no longer have to raise your voice to be heard. You no longer need to argue to be understood. You no longer have to be near for someone to miss your essence. Because the energy of someone who lives in alignment with their soul cannot be replaced, replicated, or erased. You are no longer just a memory, you are a standard. You are no longer just a chapter, they realize you were the turning point. In Buddhist tradition, monks retreat from the world, not to escape it, but to prepare themselves to return with clarity, discipline, and compassion. Your journey is the same. When you walk away from those who fail to see your light, you are not disappearing, you are deepening. You are not closing your heart, you are cultivating it. You are not ending the connection, you are transforming your presence into something so whole, so radiant, so full of divine stillness that your energy continues to echo in the lives of those who once took it for granted. And that is the most powerful way to rise, not by proving your worth, but by embodying a peace that makes them question everything they've ever known about love, presence, and connection. You are not here to be remembered with regret. You are here to become unforgettable by becoming the very thing they could never find again. 10. Live so aligned with your truth that their absence becomes meaningless. There comes a moment in your spiritual journey when you no longer live to impress, to persuade, or to be chosen. You begin to realize that the most important alignment in your life is not with another person, not with their opinion or their affection, it is with your truth. In Buddhist philosophy, the path of awakening is not about acquiring more, it's about shedding everything that is not real. And when you strip away the need for external validation, you arrive at something sacred, clarity. You begin to see what is real. You begin to hear your own inner voice, louder than the noise of past regrets. And in this clarity, you finally understand you never needed them to stay in order to feel whole. You only needed to return to yourself. When you live in alignment with your truth, you are no longer swayed by who comes or who goes. You are no longer shaken by ghosted messages or confused by sudden distance. You understand that when someone steps out of your life, they are not taking anything from you. They are simply exiting a space they were not meant to occupy forever. Their absence no longer creates a hole. It creates space for deeper purpose, for greater peace, for more meaningful connections. This is not denial. This is awakening. This is when you stop interpreting their departure as rejection and start seeing it as redirection. The universe does not subtract from your life unless it intends to add something higher in its place. Living in truth means no longer shrinking to be accepted. It means no longer dimming your light to fit into someone else's comfort zone. It means showing up fully, with honesty in your voice and stillness in your soul, whether you are applauded or ignored. Your value no longer fluctuates with someone else's attention. You no longer chase conversations that feel forced, or linger in spaces where your soul is not seen. Because when you know who you are, and more importantly, who you are becoming, you stop trying to convince others of your worth. You simply become it. You embody it in every breath, in every choice, in every quiet boundary you set without resentment. And that embodiment is what they remember. Not because you were loud, not because you demanded to be missed, but because your evolution became so authentic, so undeniable, so true that the version of you they walked away from no longer exists. In their absence, you didn't fall apart, you didn't wait. You didn't freeze your life for someone who had already let go. You grew, you healed, you walked deeper into your calling. You laughed again, not out of revenge, but because joy found its way back to you. And when they look back, they see someone they no longer have access to, not because you're bitter, but because they chose to exit a life that never stopped rising. And here's the deeper beauty. When you are aligned with your truth, you stop living in the past. You stop obsessing over how things could have been. Because you understand that what left was never yours to hold on to forever, and what is meant for you will never ask you to abandon yourself to receive it. You no longer mourn what wasn't real love. You simply give thanks for the lesson, bow in grace, and continue walking with an open heart. And in that heart, there is no room for bitterness and clarity, only growth, only quiet gratitude for the way life closed doors to protect your soul from stagnation. To live aligned with your truth is to become untouchable by the chaos of others. It is to rise so honestly that those who once dismissed you now have no choice but to respect your evolution. They may never say it, they may never come back, but their silence will be filled with the echo of your integrity, your peace, and your quiet power. That is how you become unforgettable. That is how you turn their absence into insignificancy, not by erasing them, but by becoming so full in your own being that there is no longer a space for what was never meant to stay. 11. Heal so completely that you no longer wish they had stayed. There is a kind of healing so complete, so soul-deep, that it transforms you in ways the old version of you never imagined possible. In Buddhist thought, healing is not just the act of patching wounds, it is the art of awakening. It is the process of stripping away illusions, attachments, false identities, and unspoken expectations until what remains is the truth of who you are, untouched by anyone else's choices. This is the final level of your transformation, not when you finally get them back, or receive the apology you waited for, or hear them say they regret letting you go. No. The final level is when you no longer need any of that. When the very idea of them returning feels irrelevant, not because of hate, but because you've healed to a point where your happiness no longer remembers their absence. Most people think healing is about forgetting someone or pretending they never mattered. But true healing isn't forgetting, it's remembering them without pain. It's looking back without longing. It's holding the memory like a leaf in your handlight, gentle, weightless, no burning, no bitterness, just softness, just peace. And this doesn't happen overnight. It happens through countless silent mornings where you choose not to text them, through long walks where you finally stop playing old conversations in your mind, through moments when your tears are replaced by calm breath and your desire to be understood fades into your desire to simply be at peace. It is through this quiet, persistent commitment to your healing that you become whole again. When you reach this stage, something profound happens. You no longer fantasize about what could have been. You stop asking why it ended or whether you were good enough. You no longer daydream about running into them and showing them how much you've grown, because your healing becomes so internal, so genuine, that their opinion becomes irrelevant. You don't need them to witness your transformation for it to be real. You are not growing to be seen. You are growing because your soul is finally clearing space for the peace it was always meant to carry. That's the kind of healing no one else can validate. It's felt in your bones, in the silence that no longer hurts, in the solitude that now feels sacred. And yes, there may be a day when they come back, when they reach out with words they should have said long ago, when they tell you they didn't realize what they had until it was gone. But by then, you will have evolved beyond the version of yourself that once waited for that moment. You won't respond out of resentment. You won't entertain out of emptiness. You'll simply smile, gently, and wish them well because the person you are now no longer needs anything from them. Your heart has become full again, not with noise, but with clarity. Not with attention, but with awareness. Not with nostalgia, but with stillness. Healing to this level doesn't make you cold, it makes you compassionate, because you've felt the sharpness of loss and turned it into softness. You've met your deepest fears and didn't run. You sat with them. You listened, you learned, and in doing so, you became the kind of person who loves without losing themselves, who walks away without leaving pieces behind, who forgives without forgetting who they are. That's the kind of healing that can't be faked. It glows in your eyes. It speaks in your silence. It lives in the way you now treat yourself with honor, care, and patience. And that's when you become truly untouchable, not because you're numb, not because you're guarded, but because you've risen so fully into your own presence that no one else's absence can shake you. That is the healing that makes people wonder, how did you become so free? How did you learn to let go so gently? And the answer will not come in words. It will live in your peace. And in that peace, they'll realize you were never the one who was lost. You were the one who was finding yourself all along. 12. Evolve so silently that they only realize your worth in your absence. There is a sacred kind of transformation that does not announce itself. It does not seek attention. It does not scream for validation. It moves quietly, in the background, like a mountain slowly rising from still earth. In Buddhist philosophy, true growth is not loud, it is silent, steady, and inward. It doesn't seek applause. and it doesn't wait to be witnessed. It happens in the spaces where no one is watching. It happens in your breath, in your thoughts, in the subtle ways you begin to treat yourself with more gentleness, more awareness, and more honor. And one day, without even trying, you become someone they can no longer recognize, someone they can no longer access, someone they deeply regret letting go, because your evolution happened beyond their view. In the modern world, people expect instant responses, immediate displays of growth, public proof of transformation. But when your journey becomes sacred to you, you stop needing the world to know about it. You grow for yourself. You heal for yourself. You begin taking your inner life seriously, not because you're trying to show someone what they lost, but because you're no longer willing to lose yourself ever again. That's when your glow becomes different. Not the kind that's curated for social media or shared to prove a point, but the kind that is felt, the kind that radiates from your energy, the kind that lingers in the room long after you've walked out of it. You start making decisions that reflect the depth of your new awareness. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry weight. You chase less, but when you move, your direction is clear. You love without attachment, give without expectation, and walk away without collapsing. You are no longer available for the patterns that drained you, for the conversations that reduced you, or for the people who only valued you when it was convenient. You become unavailable, no because you're punishing them, but because you've risen into a space they never cared enough to grow into with you. And this silence, this peaceful distance, this dignified detachment, it begins to speak for you. It teaches others what your presence once meant without needing to say a word. You don't have to remind them of your worth. They begin to feel it in your absence. They begin to notice how their world is quieter now, less grounded, less inspired. Not because you stopped being you, but because they stopped choosing you. And while they were comfortable with the old version of you, the one that tolerated inconsistency, forgave too quickly, and stayed too long, they now feel the loss of the evolved you. The version who chose inner peace over being needed. The version who walked away not in anger, but in power. This silent evolution is the most sacred kind. It's the growth that happens when you no longer seek closure, no longer wait for justice, no longer need to be remembered. It's when you realize that the best way to show your worth is not to prove it, it's to embody it. Every choice you make becomes a reflection of your healing. Every boundary you set becomes a quiet declaration of self-respect. Every peaceful goodbye becomes a moment of liberation. And every step you take in silence becomes a lesson for those who took your light for granted. Eventually, they will remember. They will remember the way you listened, the way you stayed when it was hard, the way you held space without asking for anything in return. But by then, your life will be different. Your mind will be clearer, your heart will be fuller, and the version of you they remember will no longer exist. You will have become someone who is no longer waiting to be understood or valued, because you understand and value yourself. So keep evolving, keep rising in silence. Let your absence become the mirror that reflects their choices back to them. And let your presence, wherever it now lives, be a sanctuary of peace that no one can ever take away again. That is how you become the one they never forget. That is how you become the soul they regret letting go, because you evolved so completely, so quietly, so fully, that they never saw it coming, and now they can't unsee what they've lost. 13. Become so whole within that you no longer wait to be chosen. At the root of so much pain in this life is the silent hunger to be chosen, to be picked, remembered, prioritized. Many of us spend years twisting ourselves into shapes that fit someone else's life, bending our needs to match theirs, hoping that one day we will finally be seen and chosen as worthy, not just in their words, but in their actions. But Buddhist philosophy teaches a different path, a higher path, a freer path, It tells us that the one who seeks validation outside will always remain hungry, while the one who learns to become whole within will never again beg for crumbs of love, respect, or attention. To become whole within means to stop seeking permission to exist fully. It means to stop waiting on a message that never comes, an apology that never arrives, or a person who always loved you conditionally. It means understanding deep inside that you are already whole, not when they finally pick you, not when they return, not when the past is fixed, but right here, in this very moment, just as you are. Because your value was never tied to their approval, it was always hidden beneath the pain, waiting to be revealed by your own hands. This sense of wholeness is not easy to find. It often starts in heartbreak, in silence, in long nights when you feel forgotten by the world. But slowly, something begins to change. You stop chasing. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop making yourself small just to fit into a place that was never meant to honor your spirit. And in that letting go, you begin to rise. You start to feel a different kind of strength, one that doesn't need noise, one that isn't driven by revenge, one that speaks softly instead of shouting. The strength of someone who no longer waits to be chosen because they have already chosen themselves. And that choice changes everything. You begin to move differently. You speak with certainty. You guard your peace without shame. You no longer step into relationships to fill a void. You enter with fullness to give and share. You don't beg to be loved, you offer love freely. And if it isn't received with care, you leave with grace. You don't lose your balance when people let you down, because you are grounded in something deeper than their attention. You become the source of your own happiness, the builder of your own inner sanctuary. And this kind of energy is unforgettable. It is the energy of someone who could have begged, but chose not to, who could have chased, but decided to rise instead, who was ignored, but used the silence to turn inward and find again the self that was never truly gone. And those who once left, they begin to notice it, not always right away, but eventually. They feel the weight of your absence, not because you forced it, but because your wholeness now reflects the emptiness they hold inside. You become the mirror they avoided, the calm they ignored, the presence they can never find again with anyone else. When you stop waiting to be chosen, you start walking toward your purpose. You begin to trust that what is truly meant for you will never ask you to abandon yourself to have it. That love, real love, will not come through performing, begging, or proving. It will find you when you are living fully in your truth. And until then, you do not dim your light. You do not pause your path. You do not set your heart aside, hoping someone will take it. You carry it with respect, with care, with pride. So let them choose what they wish. Let them go where they need to go. And in the meantime, you walk deeper into yourself, into the peace that cannot be taken away, into the strength that does not rely on being noticed, into the wholeness that asks for no outside approval to exist. Because the moment you stop waiting to be chosen is the moment you begin to live the most powerful truth of all. You were never lacking anything. You were always the one you had been waiting for. Let go with so much grace that it becomes a sign of strength. There comes a time in every person's life when they must face a hard truth. Not everyone you give your heart to will know how to hold it. Not everyone you sacrifice for will stand beside you, and not everyone you love will remain. In this moment, many break, clinging tighter, trying to repair what is already falling apart, giving more of themselves until there is nothing left to give. But in Buddhist wisdom, this moment is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the doorway to a deeper, purer, more powerful version of who you truly are. It is the sacred space where you are asked to let go. And not just let go in frustration, but let go with grace, with open hands, with a quiet heart, with full acceptance that peace is more precious than possession. Letting go with grace does not mean you never cared. It does not mean you simply gave up. It does not mean the love you gave wasn't real. It means you chose to release something that was no longer in harmony with your growth. It means you stopped watering a garden that no longer had seeds. It means you found the courage to walk away not because you were weak, but because staying would have cost you your soul. In Buddhism, this choice is seen as wisdom. To see when something no longer supports your path and to release it without clinging is one of the highest signs of spiritual maturity. Graceful letting go is not an act of weakness, it is a declaration. It is you saying to the universe, I trust your plan more than my attachment. I trust the unknown more than I fear it. I trust that anything I release with love will either return transformed or be replaced with something greater. That trust is not blind. It is built through stillness, through reflection, through countless quiet moments where you chose not to answer their silence, not to react to their distance, not to beg them to stay when their heart had already gone. In that strength, you did not shrink. You rose. You didn't fight for a place in someone else's life. You made space within your own for something deeper, truer, and more divine. And the beauty is, people remember that. Long after the words fade, long after the circumstances shift, they remember the way you let go. They remember that you didn't try to harm them, that you didn't burn bridges, that you didn't leave in anger. You simply closed the door with compassion and kept moving forward. And that kind of departure, it echoes, it lingers. It makes them reflect not only on what they lost, but on how rare it is to meet someone who can let go without bitterness. Because most people hold on to anger, most people leave with wounds and weapons. But you walked away with grace, with wisdom, with dignity that cannot be faked. And above all, letting go with grace sets you free. It releases your energy. It clears the weight of emotional clutter. It allows your nervous system to find rest again, your thoughts to soften, your heart to breathe. No more questioning if you were enough. No more replaying what you should have done differently. No more measuring your worth by someone else's choice. You begin to reclaim your time, your space, your joy. You begin to live not from emptiness, but from fullness. Because letting go wasn't the end. It was the moment you chose yourself, the moment you stopped clinging to a door that was meant to close so another could open, the moment you valued your peace more than your pride. To let go with grace is to hold the storm within you with steady hands. It is to bow with respect to what was, while lifting your eyes to what can be. It is to accept that some chapters are not meant to last forever, yet that doesn't make them any less sacred. You loved, you tried, you gave everything you could, and that is enough. The rest belongs to life. And your only task now is to live so grounded, so centered, so open-hearted that you no longer fear what leaves. Because you have finally learned the art of welcoming yourself home. After all the pain, after all the letting go, after all the quiet nights spent rebuilding what others broke, you arrive at a sacred truth. You were never meant to be remembered because you begged, performed, or pleaded. You were meant to be remembered because you became. You became the version of yourself that no longer fears silence, that no longer waits to be chosen, that no longer holds on to what was never aligned with your truth. You became the one who walks with presence, who speaks with clarity, who rests in stillness so powerful it echoes in the hearts of those who once overlooked you. The most unforgettable souls are not the loudest. They are not the ones who force their worth into the lives of others. They are the ones who transform quietly, who choose peace over ego, who grow in silence until their becoming can no longer be ignored. That is who you are now. You are no longer the one needing closure. You have become the one who gives it, through your grace, your discipline, and your unshakable choice to never abandon yourself again. Each of these 13 lessons was not just a philosophy. They were steps on a sacred path. The path of becoming someone they cannot replace, not out of spite, but because you are no longer the version of yourself who waits to be noticed. You are the one who sees clearly, who understands that every rejection was protection, that every ending was redirection, that every moment you thought you were being buried, you were actually being planted. So now, stand tall in your silence. Let your presence speak what your words no longer need to explain. Let your absence teach what your loyalty once did, and let your energy carry the quiet message they will feel long after you are gone. You didn't lose someone who needed you. You lost someone who learned to need no one but God. Your growth may not always be celebrated, but it will always be felt. Your transformation may not be understood by those unwilling to rise with you, but it will be remembered. Because the person you have become is no longer someone they can reach. You have risen too high. You've healed too deeply. You've discovered yourself in places they never cared to search. And that is your power. That is your peace. That is your legacy. You didn't just move forward. You became the one they will never forget.